the Yellow Line studio. It's the Below the Yellow Line podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I mentioned it this morning, but it has been a flurry of interviews over the past few days, and we are honored to have another very special guest with us today. Gary, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Gary Camp. I work here at Dover Motor Speedway, or I'm the Vice President of Marketing Communications.
It is very hard to tell what track you work at, judging by all the Miles the Monster statues and memorabilia behind you.
Look at all my toys in full effect in the background.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, lots of miles back there. I just realized that, maybe too much miles.
There can never be too much miles, in my opinion. I don't know. Some of the drivers might not feel that way when they're sliding off the turn 4 wall.
But we just moved into some new offices, and so I'm unpacking, and I don't know what to do with all this stuff. Like, this doesn't fit at home right, and in the office it just looks like maybe too much. So next time we talk, I might have a different background.
It's always so fun, like, for me, whenever I move houses and I kind of get to move in a new studio, and then, I'm like, oh, it's going to be great. Let's set up all my stuff, all my pictures. And then you realize, oh, I have a lot more stuff than I actually realized I did. And
it accumulates for sure. I've been here 19 years. 19 years. The tracks, we've been at this for almost 55 years at the track, and so through the process of moving offices, we've unboxed a lot of really cool stuff that is going into our archives. But yeah, it's been a kind of a cathartic process, getting all cleaned out and getting organized, and getting ready for next year already.
Yeah, if there is one thing that makes me realize, well, it makes me feel old, but it makes me realize how long I've been a NASCAR fan too. Every time I unpack stuff, and I'm just like, oh gosh, I have so many pictures and way too many die-cast cars and hats and shirts and everything. It is just crazy how much stuff.
Right, and what do you do with it all, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Might have to fire up the old eBay.com and get selling some stuff, make some extra money, because there's a lot of it just collecting dust.
Yep.
But you said it yourself. You've been here 19 years. You have been at this a long time. How did you first get into this line of work?
So I worked for a few ad agencies, and one of our clients was the hotel and casino, formerly known as Dover Downs. It's now called Bally's Dover. So I used to help those guys out with public relations and marketing. And then another piece of that responsibility was the motorsports operation. So I was kind of an assistant to the guy who had the job that I used to have on the public relations side here at the Speedway. He went on to work for Nextel when they kind of came into the sport. And so it opened the door for me as a fairly young guy to slide into the role of director of public relations at the Speedway. And it's been a fun ride. It's evolved. My job, has expanded, and responsibilities have changed over the years. I'm just wear a bunch of different hats now, but it's been a fun experience for sure, being a part of it all.
Yeah, was it really that ad agency part? Was there a party that really wanted to do something like in racing, or was it just kind of your knowledge of business and marketing and communications that kind of helped you get into it?
Well, like a lot of young folks, working in sports is pretty sexy, so that was always a draw, right? I was always fascinated with the business of the sport, for sure. I didn't grow up as a motorsports fan per se. I went to a few events here and there, but I was a baseball, basketball guy in high school, and was kind of focused on stick and ball sort of sports, and then found my path this way. I was quickly kind of enamored with the perspective that I had, fortunately, as a younger person right out of school, was to be inside the oval looking out, right? So a lot of people, and maybe people that are listening to us talk know better, but a lot of people just think about NASCAR as the driver. It's a car and a driver, and the driver's the celebrity, and he's the guy that makes it all go. But then when you really start to understand the sport and the industry and the circus that moves from town to town every weekend, and the opportunities that lend themselves, we've got a crew here in Dover of 35 people, give or take, and it's all different facets of skills that are required to make this place go. It's a business, right? So we've got a crew that are focused on accounting and finance, and they work in sports too, but they're doing what they do. And so I quickly understood that there was an opportunity to be involved on the marketing and the communications and the public relations and the promotion side of the sport And I was always kind of interested in that. And then the fact that we were just hosting big old parties where lots of people came out and had fun. And I became a fan very quickly. The industry is very welcoming, and you start to build relationships, and the same folks. There's a lot of people that I've just been dealing with since I started that they were starting at the same time, and we still, are sort of still interconnected.
Well, it's great to hear. And, going back to what you said about the drive, people think it's just the driver. We always say that with the individual race team, like, yeah, there's a picture and everything too, but with the at-track people, it's not just the officials. It's not just, David Hoots and the people up in the NASCAR box following the races. It is a whole group of people behind it. And that's what makes it so neat.
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, it's, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but Dover was always not an independent because we owned a bunch of tracks and we were publicly traded, but we were always sort of on a little island in that we weren't part of the ISC, now NASCAR, or the Speedway, SMI, now Speedway Motorsports kind of families, right? We were kind of an outlier to that, much like Pocono and maybe Indy and Gateway and some of those are. And so it's been cool to be a part of this family now of tracks with Speedway Motorsports, and to have someone that does my role at all the other racetracks that allows us to collaborate more. And it just gives you more perspective on different ways to do different things. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we were always in our heads and very focused on doing the best job we could here at Dover. We didn't really care so much about what was going on at the other venues. But now that we're part of this family, we can get kind of a look behind the curtain and see, like, oh, look at what Atlanta's doing that's really working, and we can apply that here at Dover. And there's just a lot of opportunities that being a part of the Speedway Motorsports family has afforded us.
That's great. The more the merrier, for sure. The next question I have for you, and I know you're kind of you're busy all the time. I feel like this is a job that never really takes off, and I see every weekend tweets and social media posts going out from tracks where races aren't promoting other races and promoting things upcoming. But how would you say that your job differs in terms of, I guess, workload or busyness from a race weekend, those 1-2 race weekends a year, to a non-race weekend, which is the other 50 weeks of the year?
Yeah, of course. That's always the thing we get, right, is like, that's a full-time job, you guys only have that one weekend. And of course, it's the most popular thing we get from like young kids when we talk about what we do for a living. It's hard for them to wrap their head around it, but we don't just open the gates and fans roll in and then we close the gates and then we do it again next year. It's really it's a year-long process getting ready. As soon as our last race ended, we're evaluating what went well, what went wrong, what we could do better. And we're already moving forward towards 2024. Right now, we're in a big discussion, of course, with the sanctioning body about what our date might be for next year. We've been challenged a little bit here in Dover with some weather the last couple races. Mm-hmm. So, I know everyone kind of has a position on the schedule where they'd like to be, but we're having those discussions to see if we can maybe improve our chances of not having a little bit of rain on race weekend. But like I say, it's a lot of work on a year-round basis. It's a pretty small team that hosts, a large contingent of NASCAR fans, and we're just always trying to think of things that we could be doing better and improving. Upkeep of a facility, as you can imagine, of our size is a challenge and is a year-long endeavor to try to, just keep improving the facility and keep creating new experiences for fans when they come back. For us, at the track level, NASCAR sort of brings the competition piece, right? And they do that so well, and we don't really worry about that as much. As our facilities team is preparing the surface and making sure that we've got the boxes checked in terms of safety and what we provide when the sport comes to town. But our focus in my world and with my team is really everything outside of the bowl. So that's the fan experience. There's nowhere you can go see a race where you can see a 46-foot tall monster, right? So we hang our hat on Miles and how different he is. That's a big point of differentiation for us is the monster and the monster monument. There's a lot of folks that just come and see us. As you might imagine, there's a lot of bucket list fans, right, where they travel the circuit and they like to visit all the tracks, and being able to take a photo in front of that monster monument with the full-size car in his hand is sort of an iconic image for race fans. And so we're proud of that. But all the fun that happens out by the big monster is a focus of ours. So we've got, we think, the best fan zone in the sport. We've got an 8-acre piece of land that we always try to activate and make different and fun and engaging for fans when they come to Dover. And we feel like we do a great job with that. Live music, driver appearances, just all the things that you might come to expect, but we're always trying to think of what's next. This last race, we had the world's largest moon bounce here. It was an absurdly large structure that holds the Guinness Book of World Records for size, and we had that set up for free for fans on race weekend, and we did a lot of promotion around that. But it's always, what's the next big thing that we can be doing to innovate and create ourselves as a destination for race fans.
Well, that's great. And speaking of that moon bounce, I don't know if you saw it or not, but I remember Fox came back from a commercial break during that race, and they showed Bob Pockris having some fun in it. So it's great to know that, you know, even kids that are just kids at heart, like Bob, can still have some fun.
That was great, right?
The giant moon bounce.
I'm friends with Bob, and he always has that video queued up on his phone, and anytime he runs into me, he likes to show everybody else what he was doing when he was in Dover. And that poor girl that he took down, I guess her mom was a fan, and she thought it was just the greatest that Bob Pockris was in there kind of knocking her daughter down. She wasn't hurt. She was fine. She signed the liability release. But she got a big kick out of that. The girl, not so much.
Yeah, I think, you know, you talked about all the great racing moments that have happened at Dover. I think that the moon bounce clip of Bob Pockris is probably all the promotional material y'all need for the rest of the time. Just Miles and Bob Pockris. That's all.
I would agree.
Anybody needs.
I would agree. Bob has become quite a legend of the sport in his own right.
For sure. I mean, he's a pretty good journalist, but that moon bounce clip is superior.
Yeah, he's really put himself out there lately.
Aside from Bob Pockris knocking over a child on the moon bounce, what has been your favorite either on-track moment or big inside accomplishment that you and your team have been able to accomplish?
A couple things, I guess. I've always been really proud of the work that we've done with the autism community. So we've had, for many years here, a great relationship with Autism Delaware, and Autism Speaks as a national organization through our friend Artie Kempner with Fox Sports. And so we've just done some really great things over the years with them, creating kind of a sensory-friendly room where folks with autism could come and be part of the experience, but have sort of a special experience that makes them comfortable at the race. That was something that was, we took a lot of pride in that for many years and continue to offer those sorts of things. And then I guess most memorable is I was here as a very young man working at that ad agency for the 9/11 race. So we were the first race back after 9/11, after the pause in New Hampshire. And it's just such a memorable event with Dale Jr. Pulling off the win, the fans in the stands stomping, chanting, Lee Greenwood sang, Tanya Tucker sang, Cal Ripken was our grand marshal that day. And it was just such a special moment where the NASCAR community came together to kind of help the entire nation heal after those terrorist attacks. So that was pretty special, and one that fans still talk about as being kind of their most memorable Dover memory. And then, of course, in recent years, we celebrated our 50th anniversary and had a lot of fun with that, looking back at the past and all the things that we've done here. So we've had lots of good times, that's for sure. It's funny how time flies, right? And some of these race weekends start to all blend together in your head, but then you don't forget a lot of the things. You always try really hard to slow down a little bit during race weekend and take it all in, almost like your wedding day where you're supposed to take a moment, stand in the corner and kind of look out at the crowd. We try to do that on race weekend and make sure that we enjoy it a little bit. We get a little stressed making sure that everything goes well and that we cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's, but we try really hard to also appreciate what we do for a living, that we are a venue and we host this giant party and we allow people to come here and make memories, right? So not a lot of jobs afford you that opportunity.
Absolutely. It's a really special part of what you guys get to do. So you were talking just a second ago about how cool it is to see the fans there. In the last couple of years, you guys had great crowds. I remember last year especially, Sunday was probably the most packed I have ever seen Dover Motor Speedway, and that was great to see. But 2 years earlier, in 2020, there weren't any fans allowed to be in those stands. You had to do a double header weekend. You had to hold 2 cup races in 2 days. I think 2 Xfinity races in 2 days. I'm sure that probably blends together too. But how chaotic, the part that you can remember anyway, was it trying to schedule all of that madness on the same day too that the Indy 500 had to run? So you had to hurdle that too. But how crazy was it to schedule all those races for one week?
COVID was challenging on a variety of levels for people, that's for sure. And those race weekends were just unreal, right? Because we're so accustomed to hosting fans and creating an event that's so fan-centric. And so, to be honest, for me, in my world, it was incredibly easy because we weren't dealing with a lot of the things that we normally are dealing with, right? Like I was in the media center and there were like 4 people in the media center and we're all masked up. Before the race, I'm a big cornhole guy. I was out on pit road playing cornhole, just taking a little break because I could. Certainly there were things that had to be done from a competition side and the media and the drivers and their availabilities and those things. But in terms of like what that actual race day was like compared to what it's normally like, it was pretty relaxing, to be honest, but so disappointing, right, that we weren't able to deliver that experience for those people. And our TV numbers were up and people were watching from home, and everybody, the racing was great. If I remember those races correctly, the races were great, but it was just different. And I hope we never go back to that, because the best part of our job is sort of creating a unique experience for folks. And when there was no one here, it was eerie. It was strange to have cars on the track and the garage full of teams and nobody in the stands to see it live. So
people always say NASCAR is the best fan experience in sports, just with all that you can do. But I can't imagine how weird it would be, especially for someone like you who'd been doing it for so long, seeing all those fans, and then suddenly have nobody there. I mean, it's a ghost town. All you can hear is the engines. There is no crowd. There are no autograph sessions or anything like that. It just must have been a really odd feeling.
I thought it was pretty cool though. Even though we state mandate, we weren't allowed to host people. People still showed up and they were outside the grandstand, kind of listening, watching. We had to politely ask them to disperse, but it was pretty cool to see that, almost like a Taylor Swift concert, if you will, where people are just hanging out outside and they couldn't get a ticket. It was that for race weekend, which was pretty neat.
Well, it's great to see that so many people love that track that much, that's what they're willing to do. And clearly people do love the track long enough for it to sustain, because the year prior you guys celebrated the track's 50th anniversary in 2019. How cool was it to be a part of the group that did that, and how neat was it for you to say, hey, I've been here for a good amount of these years, I helped be a part of this track's history?
No, that was a special event for sure. From wearing my marketing hat, it's always great to have something like that to work with, right? To be able to go back and create a video series that highlights all of the history when this place was built and Richard Petty was dominating, and then the Jimmie Johnson era, right, where he was starting towards his 11 wins, and to celebrate all those moments. And those guys are so gracious with their time. We did a bunch of really cool Q&As where we had Bobby Allison and Richard Petty with their 7 wins, and Jimmie Johnson and Darrell Waltrip. We had all these guys on stage telling stories about Dover and what they remembered about their first experiences here. So it was just really neat, certainly for avid fans who are passionate about the sport and understand the significance and the history of all that. It was cool to have a giant crowd out in our Grove area near the Monster for those Q&As and those things that we did. So yeah, we certainly take a lot of pride in being part of history. I think there's only 10 tracks that have run as many races as we have in the history of the sport, and so we love that we present racing in the Northeast for so many avid race fans. There's just so many passionate race fans that live within a drive's distance of us, right? Our media markets are Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City. We get a ton of fans from like the Harrisburg, York, Lancaster areas of Pennsylvania. And so just where we are in the kind of mid-Atlantic, it's just an easy drive from a lot of big markets. So to be able to be a part of the sport and on the schedule for so long is something that, we really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. My last question for you here. So Dover, it's just one race a year now in the regular season, but y'all did for a few years there in the mid-2010s have some playoff races. And I believe for a couple of years you were the cutoff race. I remember Jimmie Johnson blew a motor in 2015 at his best track, and he knocked out in the first round. But were the playoff weekends any different for you in terms of against the regular season weekends, or were they pretty normal for a race weekend?
It's always fun to be a part of those races where there's something extra on the line. So we enjoyed that when we were part of the final races of the year. But in general, we have so many fans that will choose, well, back in the day would choose one weekend over another. We didn't have a ton of overlap. It was really totally different audiences that would come to those races. Some fans used to love that June date, and then other fans love to be there in the fall. And so it was just a different audience. So I can't say that the being a part of the chase or the playoffs drove a ton of difference. It was just another extra thing that we could market around. That for 4, it's over at Dover. It was like our catchphrase for many years. And so it was neat to have that, and we love that extra little nudge to get fans out to be part of that. But that was a good time for sure.
I remember that for 4, it's over in Dover, and then I think I went to 2014, 2015, those Talladega races, and I think it was for 4, they're done in Dega, and then I think Phoenix was the cutoff race. I can't remember. I think maybe for 4, they're done in the desert or something like that.
Sounds
NASCAR's,
right.
NASCAR's puns were on full display there, and they always did a great job.
Yeah. Have you been to Dover?
I have not been to Dover. We did live kind of in that Harrisburg, Lancaster area for about a year.
Come on.
I went to my first race there. We don't live there anymore, but we went to Richmond, actually. Richmond was my first race, but I'd love to make it up to Dover. I just kind of love the Northeast in general. I mean, I call myself a Southern person, but I would love to go up there and maybe live up there and venture over to the Monster Mile.
Yeah,
great show.
We'd love to have it. Love to have it. Lots to do and see around. The track itself, there's a good bit going on with the casino on the property. But like I sort of mentioned, it's just such a quick drive to lots of other things that you can do when you're in town. We have folks that show up with their RVs a week in advance, and they'll park and they'll take a day trip to Baltimore. They'll go down to the beaches in Delaware. They'll head up to Philadelphia and catch a game. So there's just a lot to do. You can make a nice little vacation out of a Dover race weekend for sure.
Absolutely. So much kind of packed into that little area. And like you said, it's kind of a hub for all those Northeastern racing fans. The year I lived up there, I probably saw more racing fans there than I have, here at home in the South, which is typically considered like the home of NASCAR. And it is. But Northeastern racing fans are so passionate, and they love their tracks. And I can tell you clearly love what you do. And it's great that we have people as passionate as you working in our sport and working to bring us a great race weekend every year. So we appreciate your work, and I appreciate you coming on the show today. Glad we could have you on. Somebody that kind of knows the inside trade, I guess, the tools of the trade and how to they just know what's going on the inside on a NASCAR weekend. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was great chatting with you. Let's stay in touch, and maybe we can do this again.
Absolutely. Love to have you on.